in with Harper at the half. Now, one thing I take a lot of pride in is I'm open and honest with you all. And I had a very difficult time coming up with my thoughts on this. It's so layered. I had to crumble up a couple of different pieces of paper when I was jotting down my notes and toss it into the little trash can next to me. And I feel I'm going to be doing my best Hugh Douglas. I'm going to be long talking because I am that conflicted. And sometimes my points are going to contradict one another. So I am really confused on just the entirety of Harper at the half on how I should feel. And you can help me at 215-592-9494. If this doesn't end in a title, I'd be crushed. And if I know that I'm going to be crushed, and we don't eventually get a World Series out of the Bryce Harper experience, can it be a success if I'm a broken man? If it destroys me, and I am heartbroken in a million pieces, thinking the reason why you got Bryce Harper is because it will eventually result in winning hardware, and you don't eventually get that parade, and I'm shattered, can I reflect back on that and say that it was a success because every AB mattered? The energy shifted? The expectations grew to the point where you thought you had a chance every year because of his presence? And this is where the contradicting stuff comes into play. And I'm being open and honest and being transparent about it. I am lost. I am emotionally unstable when it comes to the projection of this, where we are now, the first half of the contract. What does it mean if we don't reach the ultimate goal? 75,000 things are bouncing off my head. Let's listen to Bryce Harper. This was when he signed the big ticket, and he discussed signing here for one thing and one thing only.
I want to be on Broad Street on a freaking boat or whatever, a thing, a bus, whatever it is, and, you know, have a trophy over my head and do that, because that's what it's all about. You know, that's at the end of the day, I want to be able to go to sleep and know that I gave it my all and was able to bring back a title to the Philadelphia Phillies organization, to Mr. Middleton, to Mrs. Middleton, and to the whole city of Philly, and, you know, to the fans, to everybody that's part of this. You know, that's what I want to do. That's what I feel like I want my legacy to be, is all about winning, all about playing the game the right way for a great organization and for a long period of time.
Now, he set that as the bar. So if you asked him, how do you feel to this point, knowing that was the standard, I'd imagine if he was connected to a lie detector test, none of this media crap where he has to say something right just to appease the fans. I'm saying, legitimately, Bryce, how do you feel? I think he'd probably say it's a failure to this point. We got so close to a World Series, got no hit. We had a chance against the Diamondbacks at home in front of this crazy Citizens Bank Park, and we were miserable, and we folded. And don't even get me started on what we did against the New York Mets after we won the division with over 90-plus games and we looked like to be the juggernaut of the East. And then what happened? It was a disgrace. So it's been a failure. So knowing that that's what he came in wanting to do, be on the boat, look out at the sea of fans, red everywhere, what the Eagles just experienced, he wanted that, and we haven't done it yet. If he feels it's unacceptable, should we look at it and say it's not a success? Because from his mouth, he only has one, to our ears, that's the messenger. But you know what's funny about this? I think I'm in the outside looking in on this next take, but I look back at Andy and Donovan, and I say, that's sustained success. If I didn't know the results, I'd sign up for that today. I would. I'd sign up for NFC Championship games, a Super Bowl, not knowing how it ends, but you give me that era again, which did not result in a championship, I'd do it. If you sign me up for Allen Iverson again, the AI era, I would do it in a heartbeat, not knowing what happens in 0-1, not knowing game 1, not knowing the rest of the series. I do it. Never got the hardware. So shouldn't that mean that not knowing how this whole thing ends and blah, 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 if this doesn't win in a championship, I should absolutely sign up for this experience again because it is that level of sustained success with Phillies baseball, inevitably writing them in to win, to being in the playoffs every year and maybe winning a championship. You'd think the answer would be yes. But for some reason, this particular circumstance hits me different than the other two I just explained. And I may have an answer for it. It may just be time sensitivity. It may be because I'm in the now. I'm in the thick of it. I'm in the middle of the frustration. And with some things that annoy me throughout the experience of Phillies baseball now, which may not even be Bryce Harper's fault. It could be how poor Dave Dombrowski was this most recent offseason. It could be the incompetent bullpen. It could be the stupid base running. But it gets applied to the Bryce Harper thing. Because he's the face of it all. And there are some guys, whether they're the reason or not for the team winning or losing, because Bryce has had some spectacular postseasons and amazing postseason moments. Joel Embiid is the face of Sixers. Jalen Hurts is the face of the Birds. This is Bryce Harper, the face of the Phillies. And it just goes that way sometimes. But, going back to other experiences and applying it to this one here, I'd sign up for that. Do I look at 2022 when that Eagles run with Jalen and how awesome he was and how he outdueled Pat Mahomes in a Super Bowl loss? Do I look at that as not a success? Whew. It's a difficult question. I look at it as a success. So why would I feel differently if this era ends in a similar fashion, which is no hardware? If it does go that way, I hope it doesn't. I hope we don't ever end up in this circumstance, but it's Harper at the half. And if you couldn't tell, throughout the first 10 minutes of this program, I'm all over the place. Seriously. And I'm just leaning into it. I like to, structure this puppy, but I'm honestly, from the bottom of my heart, conflicted in so many different ways with this. I need your help. 215-592-9494. How should we feel about Bryce Harper to this point? And how should we feel if, and it's the worst case scenario, and I'm sorry, it's just where we are, if this goes to long haul and we don't get the hardware we set out to get? Would that make you feel different from your answer today? Do you think it's 2 thumbs up today, but only if we get a championship down the road? Will you give 2 thumbs up when the contract's all said and done? We'll talk about it. Let's go to Frank in Philly to kick things off. What's happening, Frank?
Brodes, my man, how's everything going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm good. Long couple hours here for you before the holiday. I hope you have a good weekend.
You too.
I wanted to chime in on this Harper at the half thing, and I'm kind of where you are. I'm playing my bipolar self here, my inner battles on, how I am with Nola, and I get to the point where I'm like, Embiid is Harper, Harper is Embiid, and he's not Embiid. That's just me over exaggerating things.
Sure,
but I think to this point, yeah, you're right. Has it been a success? It has, but the worry that we have here and what we're worried about, and you hear Spike prior to this saying, they're 536 with him on the field, they're 536 with him off the field. Yeah, but you also have a sustainable roster with him off the field, and he's part of the reason why those people are here, right? So you have to go with that too. And when the guy's on the field, he's made plays. The problem is when you're looking at it at this point, and you start to see the age and you start to see these nagging injuries and the time that he's missing, that's where you start to say, all right, could this fizzle out and end fast and, blow up in our face? And by the time we look up, we don't know how we're going to feel because we're going to be staring in the midst of, oh, wow, we put this guy on a 10-year, 12-year contract, whatever it is, 13-year contract, and we got 5 years out of it.
Right. No, I totally agree. That's why a couple days ago I did a whole show on me panicking about just where his wrist is, and it just seems like it may never go away, which means he constantly has to play with this happening. And can we survive if we don't have Bedlam at the bank? Can we survive if we don't have those huge playoff moments against the Braves with Arcia? That's what helped you take steps, to Bryce's credit,
Right,
to get you to an NLCS, to get you to a World Series. You needed that Bryce Harper, and to no fault of his own, it's just the nature of getting up there in age, the way he plays the game. What we admire him for might end up being the downfall just from father time, but that's a real concern, Frank.
yeah, and that's just it. Like, maybe he has to learn that he just doesn't have that, and he's got to put the ball in play. Similar to the game against the Diamondbacks when he's up and a double ties the game, and he tries to hit a home run. Now, he almost pulled it off, but it was warning track strength. It didn't go out. So, you're looking at it and you're like, all right, well, you hit the ball pretty hard. If we're looking at actually putting the ball into a gap instead of trying to hit it out of the park, you tie that game up, you might win that game. You never know.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah.
we might need a mindset, and that's hard for a guy the way he plays and the way he's played his whole life to just flip that switch and change from, I got to be the guy to I got to be the guy in a different role now.
Sure. And that's interesting. Frank, thank you for the call. See, because my instant reaction when Frank was laying that out is that's how we get Bedlam at the bank, though, is because he puts himself in that moment and says, I am going to be the hero. But to your point, maybe at 28, 29, when his wrist isn't bothering him, you have the luxury to pull that off, compared to projecting the next wave of the Bryce Harper experience post-wrist and post-halfway mark. Maybe you do need to tweak some things to allow for the longevity of the contract to really work its magic, because you can't view it like you're 27 anymore. He needs to have that internal conversation. I'm wondering if that's where we're at. I'm not saying that's definitely where we're at. But, I was listening to some of the audio throughout the day and some of the home runs that were hit, and you're hearing calls where the ball's getting smoked 430 feet into the second deck. And I watched him during the doubleheader. He had a little poke job out to the little left center field, one-handed swing, and it didn't look anything other than probably painful. And
Stinger.
Yeah, one of those. But here's what's interesting, too, when you compare Phillies generations from the 07, 08 into the 10s and where we are now. You got the championship in 08, but it was almost like you left so much meat on the bones. When you reflect back on that era, they got the championship, and we still automatically say, whenever you're in conversation with others, yeah, but we should have had more. Or, 09, Chase Elder. We should have had more. But with this hypothetical, it's almost as if just get one to salvage it. While with the 08 crew, it was, you could have had so much more. If they get one out of this group, I don't know if we would all in 20 or 30 years say they should have had three. Now, maybe we do. Maybe I'm off base. Maybe we look back at Houston, although I thought Houston was better. The Diamondback series, that one hurts because I thought the Phillies were better than the Rangers. At least I could see that thing going 7 and it be an epic series where you could have beaten the Rangers. The Rangers were not better than you the way I thought Houston was better than you. But maybe you do look back at the Houston series. Everyone reflects on Wheeler Alvarado. I don't think the Phillies were... what's the way to explain? I don't think they lost one there. I just think they went on a miracle ride, and you see this happen a lot in sports where the one team that rides the high and this incredible wave eventually faces a team that is better than them, and the magic wand runs out of its magic.
Yeah, Houston and Arizona, very different.
Yes, very different. And if you were to advance against Arizona, the matchup against the Rangers, I thought, very different feel. Could have been a victory in your favor. Maybe we do look back at it and we keep reflecting on Arizona. We probably will. But I do think that there's a view of salvaging this, trying to get a championship compared to getting it done in '08, and then you had '09, 2010, 2011, all these guys coming over big time, starting pitching, and just the amount of talent and the amount of players on your roster that were out of this world. It just had a different spin on it compared to where we are with this. Let's go to Warren. You're on WIP. Yo, Warren.
Yo, Brodes. How you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm not liking this Bryce Harper return at all. How about you?
You're not. So you're very disappointed in the Bryce Harper experience.
Well, he sounds down, and I would like a Bryce Harper that's a leader and not a powder, if you know what I mean. And so far, it sounds, just kind of gloomish from him since he's been back. His energy sounds down. I'd like to see and hear, some more positivity, some more bravado. It just doesn't sound like the Bryce Harper that we're used to seeing, take the field, bases loaded, Harper's at the plate, 2 strikes, and you're looking for some magic, and it sounds like the air is out of the balloon.
Right now, I agree. I think that the current energy around Bryce is, I think he's hurting more than he wants to admit, and he's wearing it on his sleeve. He's wearing it on his face. I think he is damaged right now, and he's trying his very best to be out there with his team, and he was hoping he'd be in a better spot after hitting the IL. But the full first half of Bryce, would you still say that you're disappointed, or would you say the full body of work since signing that contract you feel has been a success to this point?
I would say it's a success to this point because I'm not down on Bryce. It's just he's got to project. He's a leader. He's got to project positivity, even if you're hurt. And we've all been there. We've all been hurt. We've all been down. But that's his job, as the leader of this team, the face of the franchise, to project positivity, to project energy, even if you don't feel it inside. Even if you can't produce right now. If you're going to take the field, you've got to be as 100% as you can be to all your teammates, to your coaches, to your fans. You can't be this downer, projecting his face looks, his mannerisms. You've got to do whatever you can, as best as you can, to be as 100% as you can. That's the way I feel. That it just doesn't seem like he's coming off that way on this return.
I agree with you. I think and thank you, Warren. Thank you so much. If we're strictly discussing the current vibe around Bryce, I think he's wearing it a ton on him. I really do. But maybe it's because he is defeated. And you're right, though. When you are the team leader, maybe there's ways to not wear it as much. But I think he's just being, just like I am throughout the show today, just open and honest. I think that's where he is right now. And maybe you can start debating if he should play it publicly differently or whatnot. But the word leader is fascinating because for as big of a showman as Bryce is, and for as much as the national attention is for Bryce Harper, and always has been since he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, every time we look at a leader vocally, it seems to shift away from him. Rhys Hoskins. I think the way Rhys developed as a mature leader from day one to when he left in a Phillies uniform was such huge development. Day after day, year after year. Rhys ended up becoming the vocal leader of the crew with Bryce being in the clubhouse. Kyle Schwarber. Same applies to him. You went out and got him because of what he means to a clubhouse everywhere he's been. Chicago, Boston, now here. There is something to be said about the way that he talks, the way that he speaks, the way that he does everything, the way that he moves as a player, the way that he handles adversity, the way that he handles when the team is going through a slump. We're all complaining, rightfully, and he's keeping the team where it needs to be emotionally. That's his job. That's what he does well. Bryce doesn't really fit that to me. He is the leader of stretching a single to a double, playing with effort, hair's on fire. He's got the beautiful lettuce. The helmet flies off. He's slicking the hair back with his hands, and he's getting the team juiced up. I think that's the way that he attacks. That's the way he leads. He leads, not that he doesn't have a voice. He's always going to his Bryce Harper. But I think he allows others to take that step and to take that ride in the clubhouse. Reese, Kyle, and he does it on the field. And you either have it or you don't. It's a point guard in basketball. You either have the instincts or you don't have the instincts. And I think for him, that's always been something that's been missing in the Bryce Harper experience. Is it's been others that have been the loud vocal or loud vocally or whatever. But that doesn't mean this isn't a success. Now we're playing the nitpick Bryce Harper game. See what I'm saying? I don't know where this is taking us today. I have no clue. But I'm just letting you know that we will be discussing Harper at the half all throughout the program. 215-592-9494. I want you guys to take a listen to Bryce Harper. This was also during when he first signed here. This is super quick. It's about 5-6 seconds. But why the long deal here?
For me, it was all about the long haul. It was about, being able to dig my roots, being able to plant somewhere where I wanted to be for a long time.
The reason I want that played is, do we view this experience different because the big-time free agent chose us? He chose Philadelphia. He could have played, just speaking out there, the Dodgers, L.A., San Francisco. You're out in California, beautiful weather. He chose the blue-collar East Coast city. I love the attitude. That's what he was saying, right? He chose us. So because he chose us, do we now view this era with a different lens? Is there more of a leash? Is there more wiggle room? Because how many times do we get that flash? Bryce Harper? Bryce Harper. And now the contracts are through the roof that you look at his and you kind of laugh like, that's it? But at the time, I mean, it is monstrous. This is fascinating to me. It really is. Let's go to Heavy. You're on WIP. What up, Heavy?
Yo, Brodes, what's good?
What's happening?
I'm chilling, man. Dude, I love Bryce Harper. Obviously wanted to succeed, here as a Philly. But, you bringing up the fact that, he's supposed to be the leader of this team, and he's just really not. And that, that might not be his personality, and that's all fine as long as you get the job done on the field. But, he's pushing into his mid-30s, and he hasn't got the job done on the field. He hasn't won the World Series. Sure, he's put up some solid seasons. I wouldn't say anywhere near, astronomical, but he's obviously been a very solid player, one of the best players in the league for the last, over the last 10, 12 years. But obviously now he's coming into a certain point of his career where, are we really going to get the same guy that we paid for 5 years ago? Most likely not. But there's still something that this guy has to do, and they have to win a World Series. I'm sorry, but if Bryce Harper wants to go down, and if anybody wants to try to put him down as one of the best Phillies of all time, you are not going to be on that list unless you win a World Series. And I look at this team, and I love the Phillies. I want to see him succeed. But I look at this team, and I think back to what we had in 2008, what it took for us just to win one World Series. And that year, we had the best power hitter in the majors. We had the best second baseman in the majors. We had a top three shortstop in the majors. We had the best infield in the majors, and we had other guys that were pretty big pieces on that team. Yeah, Pat Burrell hit over 30 home runs.
Jason Worth.
And I look at this team, and I don't know if this team is at the same level as that team that can get the job done, and that's what I'm worried about.
All fair. Listen, Heavy, thank you so much for the call. All fair to bring up what it took. I think it's fascinating to see sort of the levels of the roster and where you were in those years. And, That's where it's conflicting is baseball is so difficult with the amount of people it takes to actually get it done. If you have an OPS that starts with a 1 dot and you're doing that in the playoffs, then isn't that you doing your job? But if Dave Dombrowski can't figure out a bullpen outside of Orion Kirkering, then this could all be a Dave Dombrowski issue more than it is a Bryce Harper issue, which it is. I mean, I'm flat out telling you it is. But that's how much it takes. Is you need that great defense up the middle. You need that 30 home run guy. Right now, look at the home run totals for Max Kepler, Nick Castellanos combined with the slop in center field. Although Marsh is starting to do better, but it's not good enough. So that's where the big picture is. Well, if Bryce Harper's doing everything he can every at-bat and having clutch moments after clutch moments, and he's just pulling them out of his rear end constantly in the playoffs, but the other pieces aren't aligning, then do we knock Bryce for that? Listen, we'll continue this. 215-592-9494 as we roll into our first break here. A lot of great calls. Can't wait to hear from you. Some open lines. Again, 215-592-9494. How should we feel about Bryce Harper at the half? And how would you feel if this thing doesn't result in a championship? Do you think you'd feel the same way, or would your emotions shift? Coming up next, we'll hear a Bryce Harper call, one that I'm sure you've heard many times before, but goosebumps exist every single listen. It's Brodes, it's you, it's 94 WIP.